Thank you, Rolando. It's great to be here. Thanks for organising this. I was with Rolando down in Miami recently, talking to a great group of Cuban Americans, and you just love the passion. You know, these are people who have lost one country and they're damn well not going to lose another one. Now, so can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Can you understand a real southern accent? Look, Reagan said you should always start with a funny story, and after Alex's speech, I can understand why. Because and I've got to say, I was very pleased to meet Alex today. I've admired his work for some time. He's one of the few journalists out there today who really thoroughly investigates the communist movement. His work that you see in WND and in the New American is just top-notch, and I refer to it often. We sort of, you know, help each other out a little bit from time to time. But I was in Los Angeles a while back, and I like street food, so I went up to a street vendor and I can't remember what it was. I paid the money and the guy said to me, "Wow, you've got an accent. Where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm from New Zealand." He said, "Where's that?" And I said, "Well, it's down by Australia." He said, "Oh, where Arnold Schwarzenegger comes from." I think he'd done Common Core geography. So look, everybody always says to me, what I've been doing is, for the last 3 years, I've been touring your country, mainly to Tea Party groups, conservative groups, talking about the dangers of communism in your country. I was the guy who first exposed the connections between Frank Marshall Davis, the Hawaiian communist, and Mr. Obama, and also exposed Van Jones, the communist green job czar who Glenn Beck got kicked out of the White House. So I've been doing this for quite a while. Your government gives me 90-day visas to visit your country. But I'm very tempted to stay for 91 days because apparently I'll get a free cell phone and healthcare and a whole lot of other things as well. What a great country. So everybody says, why do you care about the United States? And I say there are two basic reasons. The first is gratitude. My country was saved in World War II from invasion by the Japanese, by the huge sacrifice of your fathers and grandfathers and uncles at the battles of Guadalcanal and the Coral Sea and Midway. That huge sacrifice saved us, folks, and that is a very strong memory in my country today. The second reason is related, but it's a little more selfish. Ronald Reagan had it right. This is the last best hope for mankind. If freedom should fail in the United States, if you lose your constitution, your liberty, your economic dynamism, and your military superiority, all of which are in grave danger, the bad guys of this planet, I'm talking Russia, China, Iran, Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, North Korea, Iran and their Islamic allies, and they are all allies, they will carve up this planet amongst themselves. Now we see this happening now, folks. You look at the world today. All of your allies around the world right now, from Germany, Israel, Britain, Canada, Australia, they're all freaking out, folks, because they see that your president loves the bad guys a lot more than he loves them. This is causing huge instability, people. You know, Japan is now rearming itself, which does not please us in Australia and New Zealand. We understand that they have to protect themselves from North Korea and China because they can't rely on you guys to do it anymore. And all your allies are just freaking out, you know. They saw what your president did to Poland and Czechoslovakia. One of his first acts of office was to cancel a missile shield that was going to protect them from the Russians. Then he abandoned Georgia to the Russians. And now they're looking at the Ukraine, folks. The Ukraine has a treaty signed under Bill Clinton in your Senate to protect them from Russian military aggression. They gave up their nuclear arsenal in exchange for an American promise of protection. And now that they need it, folks, where is it? So far, Obama has given them a few $100 million of non-lethal aid. He gave $2 billion to India recently for smart cities. A few $100 million of non-lethal aid and John Kerry. Who is John Kerry, folks? He's basically Jane Fonda with less testosterone. So the Russians are supposed to be terrified of this. There also have been some sanctions, yes. I saw a rally in Moscow the other day. A woman held up a sign that really showed what they think of your sanctions. The sign said, "Your porn is harder than your sanctions." They're terrified, right? You've got to realise that Mr. Obama was mentored by pro-Soviet Marxists his entire life. Frank Marshall Davis in Hawaii, almost certainly a Soviet agent, Communist Party member. Alice Palmer in Chicago, the woman who got him his first job in politics, definitely a Soviet agent. Their agenda was always to destroy the United States military, because they knew if they could take out your military, their friends in Russia and China would rule this planet. Obama, since he's come to office, has cancelled weapon systems. He's cutting down your Navy to pre-World War II levels. He's gutting the Army. He's driving out thousands of good officers with the gay policies, women in combat, rock-bottom morale. He wants to cut your nuclear arsenal to 265 nukes, folks. The Russians alone have more than 8,500 that we know about. 265 nukes and then down to zero, because peace is breaking out all over, people. Would the chaos, and this is the one I want to point a finger here a little bit. You had 20 million Christians who weren't even registered to vote in the last election in this country. They complained about the persecution of Christians in the Middle East, the slaughter of Christians in the Middle East. Wouldn't that be happening today if you had a Reagan in the White House? They had the power to stop that, folks. Just like the Christians in Germany had the power to stop Hitler, but didn't do it. They need to vote in the next election, people, because we're only going to save this planet if we have another Reagan, folks. Because all around the world, the bad guys are getting stronger and stronger. Putin won't stop with the Ukraine. He'll take out the Baltic states, Eastern Europe and Western Europe. Iran will dominate the Middle East. China will dominate the Far East, Africa and Latin America, and you will be surrounded. If America falls, folks, every Western country will fall. The Chinese are already in Fiji, they're already in Tonga, just near my country. They're buying up politicians in my country, buying up land. If you guys go down, folks, there ain't nowhere to run. Because if there was, I would be there already. I think the most significant thing your president said in his entire first term of office, when he was caught off mic in South Korea with then Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, thought no one was listening. Yes, Mr. Medvedev, when I get re-elected, I'll have more flexibility to deal with you. Yes, said Medvedev, I understand. I will pass your message on to Vladimir. We are with you. What more of a warning do you need, guys? How much more blatant does it need to get? Now my books, I've got both of my books up there. The first one is Barack Obama and the Enemies Within, nearly 700 pages on Obama's Marxist and communist ties. But I'll tell you straight, people, that's a very heavy book. And I got really, really sick of lugging it around the country, I can tell you. And I vowed and declared that my next book would be smaller and lighter. And this one is The Enemies Within, Communists, Socialists and Progressives in the US Congress. And guess what, people? It's bigger. Because those commies just kept on coming, folks. And I couldn't leave out Corinne Brown, could I? Or Alan Grayson. And you got a few here. Mr. Alvin, Alvin, what's your mayor here? Alvin Brown. He's got a very top staffer, a man called Tony Hill. Long time history with the Communist Party. You should have a look at him. But the book is really about the two big secrets of modern communism. The first secret, I think they borrowed from the devil. Because we all know that the cleverest thing the devil ever did was to convince people he doesn't exist. Made a lot of progress that way. So what have the communists been telling you in the last 20 years, folks? Pretty much the same thing, right? Well, you can trust them about as much as you can trust their mentor, folks. Now, the second big secret of modern communism, it's hardly ever been discussed in the thousands of books on the subject. It is the ability of a tiny Marxist-Leninist party, maybe only a few hundred comrades strong. It is their ability to influence and even control the legislative process in their country. In other words, to write the laws. So what I'm saying is, less than 20,000 card-carrying communists in your country are right now writing the laws that rule the lives of more than 300 million Americans. Right now, folks. Now, the mechanism they use, the key mechanism is control of the labour unions. Now, you may say, well, look, unions aren't what they used to be. Right to work state, 11-12% of the workforce, big deal. You name me one elected Democrat in this country, from county commission to federal level, who does not owe his job to the unions. For money, for manpower, for get out the vote, even for vote fraud, which thankfully is not a problem in this state, right? So the unions get them their jobs, folks. So if you're, say, a Democrat county commissioner, and the unions come to you and say, we want you to promote this measure, and you say, look, this is a conservative district, I don't think the people would like that, and they say to you, damn the people, this is what we want, and if you don't do it, we will put you out next time. What do you think the Democrat's going to do, folks? What he's told, right? So the process is simple. The Marxists set a policy. This is what we want for America. It might be socialisation of student loans, green jobs, cap and trade, card check, normalisation of relations with Cuba, completely communist program. It might be a New START treaty with Russia. It might be Obamacare. They set a policy, they make it union policy, and the unions make it Democrat policy. There's not a policy in today's Democratic Party at federal and most state levels that cannot be traced directly back to the Communist Party USA or Democratic Socialists of America, or both. They are running the agenda, folks. So you are very lucky in this country, because for a long time your unions were run by hardcore anti-communists like Lane Kirkland and George Meany. But in 1995, folks, everything changed. That was the year that Democratic Socialists of America took over your labour movement, the AFL-CIO. They kicked out Lane Kirkland and they put their member, John Sweeney, in as president. And now their protege, Richard Trumka, runs it for them. They took out the anti-communist clause from the AFL-CIO's constitution and the Reds came flooding back. Now they own the SEIU, AFSCME, NEA, the AFL-CIO itself, you name it folks, they run it. So this has basically given them huge leverage over the Democrats. They started a purge in the Democratic Party after that, after 1995. They kicked out all the Dixiecrats, the Southern Democrats, the Conservatives, the Moderates. Joe Lieberman, the Senator from Connecticut, was the last one to go. And now they own that party, folks. So 20,000 communists own the Labour movement, and the Labour movement owns the Democratic Party. Got it locked up, folks. And you got all these wonderful, loyal, good Democrats out there who still think they're voting for Harry Truman and JFK. That's the sad part, people. Now, I want to give an example of how this process works, and I want to pick on one that's been in the news a lot lately, and that is comprehensive immigration reform, or amnesty. Now you have Republicans, people, and I use that word in inverted commas, who tell you that amnesty is good for the GOP. Because if you give citizenship and voting rights to 11, 12, 20 million illegals, they're all going to be so grateful they'll all become staunch Republicans, right? Just delusional. Now we know that the bulk of the Latinos, I'm not counting the Cubans, but the bulk of Latinos in this country vote overwhelmingly Democrat. They won't change in a hurry, folks. You know, 90% of the black population has voted Democrat since the 60s. No matter what the Democrats do to enslave and degrade their communities, they still keep ticking those Ds, do they not? 80% of the Jewish population has voted Democrat for a century. No matter what the Democrats do to Israel, they still keep ticking those Ds, do they not? Maybe the Latinos, who are often socially conservative, will change in 20 or 30 years. You know, and Juan and his fellows are really working on that. But we don't have 20 or 30 years, folks. We've got till the next presidential election. Because if we lose that, the Democrats are going to dissolve the southern border and they're going to import as many voters as they want until you are done. That's their plan, folks. You imagine if most of the illegals coming across the border were Republican supporters. Obama would have the biggest fence on the border you have ever seen, folks. He'd have the National Guard of every state down there, and he'd talk about nothing but voter security, border security, and protecting the American worker from unfair competition. Would he not? Now, is it any coincidence? Why do Republicans tell you this stuff, folks? Could it be connected to the fact that the US Chamber of Commerce has spent more than $1.7 billion promoting amnesty in the last 10 years? What do you think the Chamber wants out of it, guys? Is it hard to figure out? Who picks all the oranges in your state, people? The Chamber wants cheap labour. And I'm all for profit, I'm all for business, but when you make a profit, you have to count the hidden costs. And the hidden cost of their cheap labour is the destruction of your border integrity, the endangerment of your national security, and the destruction of the rule of law in your land. They get the profits, you bear the costs. Is that fair? But the real driver of this movement is the hard left, the communists. This started out in California in the 1960s with a Communist Party member named Bert Corona, a hardcore Stalinist. He was also a Democrat. He set up the Viva Kennedy clubs, the first organised effort to bring Latinos into the Democratic Party. He also set up, mainly with church money, a whole bunch of support groups through the Southwest and Southern California to encourage illegals across the border. These groups encouraged the illegals, they got them work in factories and farms, and they got them citizenship and voting. The voting was the goal, people. Now, Corona trained a whole bunch of disciples to carry on his work. 3 of them are very prominent today, and they work together in Southern California. They have transformed that state, folks. The first one is Antonio Villagrosa, until recently the mayor of Los Angeles. A hardcore Marxist-Leninist, he used to go down to Cuba to cut sugarcane for the Castro brothers. He turned Los Angeles into a sanctuary city. He forbade the LAPD from enforcing immigration laws, and the illegals flooded in the hundreds of thousands, changed the entire demographics of the state. Second member of this group, a Communist Party supporter named Gil Cedillo, until recently the Democratic head of the California State Senate. Big-time amnesty activist. He got the DREAM Act pushed through in California about 3 years ago, which gave all sorts of so-called rights to the children of what they euphemistically call undocumented workers. Third member of this group, the most powerful woman in California in my opinion, another Marxist, Maria Elena Durazo, the head of the California AFL-CIO. She is behind the massive union-driven and union-paid-for Latino voter registration drives and get-out-the-vote efforts that have added hundreds of thousands of new Latino voters to the California rolls in the last 15 years, almost all of them Democrats. The result of this deliberate Marxist program has been to turn California from a reddish-purplish state to solidly blue. All of the Electoral College votes from California, your most populous state, are now firmly in Democratic hands. Hugely important when it comes to presidential elections, folks. Now, the leader of the movement today, and I guarantee you've seen him on TV wearing a purple shirt, leading an amnesty rally. His name is Eliseo Medina. He was formerly the head of one of the heads of the SEIU union, largest private sector union in your country. He is a member of Democratic Socialists of America, a Marxist, supports the Communist Party USA, just as that was in the same bit of paper that I found out about Tony Hill, by the way. It's a former member of Obama's Latino Advisory Committee, along with several other Marxists, and works very closely with Luis Gutierrez, the rep from Illinois, who is driving the amnesty thing through the House. Gutierrez is a former member of the Puerto Rican Socialist Party, a pro-Cuban Marxist-Leninist outfit, now serving in your Congress. Medina is the man who got the amnesty bill pushed through your Senate. He's been using his union members all over your country to hold rallies, and he's been personally consulted by Mr. Obama before Obama did his latest push for amnesty and did the executive order on amnesty. Medina runs this, folks. Now, I want to ask a little question. Anybody in this room, I'm not going to persecute you, anybody in this room is a former or current union member? Okay? Okay, well, cast your mind back, please, guys. Which organisation in this country 25 years ago was leading the charge against illegal immigration? Against? The AFL-CIO, the unions. They had people on the border, folks. They were constantly lobbying Congress to increase penalties on any employer caught employing illegals. Because they saw, quite correctly, that illegals were unfair competition for union members and would drive wages and conditions down. Very logical, right? So which organisation in 2015 is leading the charge to legalise the illegals? The unions, the AFL-CIO and SCIU. So why were illegals bad for union workers 25 years ago, but now they're okay? The fact is they aren't. The change is this. Before 1995, the unions were there to represent the interests of their members. After 1995, when they were taken over by Democratic Socialists of America and the Communist Party USA, their agenda changed to promoting socialist revolution. The illegals are real bad for union workers, folks, but that doesn't matter. The unions are quite prepared to sell out their own members because the revolution comes first, folks. It took Medina 5 years of hardcore lobbying and deal-making inside the AFL-CIO, a whole bunch of arm twisting, to get them to flip their policy from anti-illegal to pro-illegal, which he achieved at their national convention in Louisiana in 2000. The Marxists did it, folks. But the real important question is this: why does he want it? Why is he doing this, people? And why has Obama risked all that political capital on executive amnesty? Well, Medina let the cat out of the bag at a big progressive conference in Washington, D.C. 3 years ago. I've got him on tape and I quote him in my book. He got up in front of the comrades and said this: passing an immigration bill, passing amnesty is the #1 priority of the progressive movement. Even before Obamacare, folks. We have to get citizenship and voting rights for our 11 million undocumented workers. And did he talk about compassion or reuniting families or giving immigrants a break or the American dream? Not a single bloody word, folks. All he said was this: in 2008, Latinos voted overwhelmingly for Obama and progressive candidates. If we stand by these people and get them citizenship and voting rights, they will stand with our movement. That will give us at least 8 million more Democratic Party votes. That will give us a governing majority, not just for the next few election cycles, but for the foreseeable future. In other words, forever. How many votes did Mitt Romney lose the last presidential election by, guys? 2.5 million votes, I believe. 8 million more Democratic Party votes, folks. The first thing that will happen is that Texas will go blue. And if you take the Electoral College votes from Texas, your second most populous state, add them to the Electoral College votes from California, which they've already got, do the math, people. It makes it practically impossible for the Republicans to ever elect another president. Ever. One-party state. And if you think the Democrats are arrogant now, what do you think they'd be like with 8 million more votes in their pockets and the Republicans permanently out of office? Would this country become like France and Germany, like some deluded conservatives tell you? Or would it become like Venezuela pretty darn quickly and Cuba not long after? Because that is their plan, folks. That's why the Marxists are doing this. And you have Republicans who tell you this is good for the GOP. These are not stupid people telling you this. They can add up numbers. I bet you they can tell you exactly the total of the checks they got from the Chamber of Commerce. Yet they want to give the Democrats 8 million at least free votes. And when they open the borders, which they'll do, it'll be 20 million. With no plan to counter it, folks. What do you call it when someone sells out their country for a few dollars, knowing what it's going to do to you?
Traitor.
It's what they are, folks. It is what they are. No question. Because they know the consequences and they're still trying to do it. Now, my books also deal with the individuals, because I think these people should be held accountable for what they're doing to your country, folks. Now, I want to ask another question. Anybody in this room ever applied for a federal government job who is willing to admit it? Okay? A lot of private sector people here. Good. Well, thank you, sir. Well, what kind of job did you apply for, sir?
United States military.
Okay, well that goes without saying, but good for you. But if you applied, I should have said not counting military, because you check that automatically. But I'll tell you straight, any federal government job in this country, even post office, you need an FBI security clearance. And they can go through your underwear drawers, folks. They can check out your family background, your relatives, overseas travel, your education, criminal history, drug habits, whatever. I had a friend who applied for a federal government job in Virginia 2 years ago. This is a staunch conservative guy. The FBI drove to Canada to interview his communist uncle. On the strength of that interview, my friend was denied that position. And fair enough, folks, because this is the federal government, the heart of the free world. Your country has enemies who have a history of using your weak and dishonest against you. You might be, guarding a nuclear facility someday. You might have state secrets under your control. You might have the ability to influence public policy in an anti-freedom direction. They need to be able to trust you. But what if you're a young Marxist socialist radical who hangs around with the Communist Party, like Corinne Brown or Alan Grayson or Elsie Hastings or Frederica Wilson or Kendrick Meek, or Jan Schakowsky, Jerry Nadler, Rosa DeLauro, Barbara Lee, John Conyers. And those local communists control the local unions and the local Democratic Party, and they have the ability to put a suit and tie on you and make you look nice and get you elected to Congress or even the Senate, where you can serve on the Science and Technology Committee, the Homeland Security Committee, the Armed Services Committee, even the Intelligence Committee, like Andre Carson, the Marxist Muslim who just got put on from Indiana, where you have access to all sorts of government secrets and the ability to influence public policy, not just on a national level, but an international level. How much of an FBI security check do you need for that one, folks? Nothing. Zero. Because the people are supposed to vet the candidates, right? And the media is supposed to help you do it, right? How's that working out? See the problem? Now, if you were a foreign intelligence officer up in the United Nations, which has hundreds of them, from North Korea or Iran or Cuba or Nicaragua or Venezuela or China or Russia or South Africa or India, and you had networks of sympathizers in the communist parties and labour movement of this country who had the ability to elect their secret members and their friends into your Congress to bring back any information you wanted and steer public policy in the directions favourable to your enemies. Do you think those foreign intelligence officers are so lazy and stupid that they don't take advantage of that? Massive hole in your national security, folks. The most important legislators in the free world are sitting up there with all the information they want and no security checks. People, if those foreign intelligence officers don't do their job, they might not go home to a fat pension. They might go home to the gulag. You seriously think they're going to ignore that massive hole in your national security that you could drive a Sherman tank through? What do you think, people? I quote Raul Castro in my book, boasting about how members of your Congressional Black Caucus, about 40 members, set up by communists, go down to Cuba on a regular basis to talk to the Castro brothers how they're going to work inside your Congress to put pressure to ease trade and travel restrictions on Cuba. And now they've done it, folks. What do you call it? So now the Cubans can send more spies and more terrorists to your country. Now Cuba can become the China of the Caribbean, where your factories are going to locate down there for the cheap labour, where the Cubans can mine their technology and sell it to the Chinese so they can use it against you. What do you call it, folks, when someone goes from your country to an enemy foreign country to help them against you? That's a capital offence, people. And it's going on every day and nobody says anything. More than 20 of your congressmen and senators have been in Cuba in the last 2 years, folks. Sent down there by Marxist groups like the Centre for Democracy in the Americas and the Institute for Policy Studies. 20 of your leading congressmen and senators. Now, this treason has been going on for a while, folks. I'll ask another question. Any Vietnam veterans in the room tonight? Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. I knew there would be several. Thank you very much. Well, here's a couple of questions. Was the Vietnam War lost in the jungles of Vietnam? Always get the same answer. Is it true that your troops in the field had some pretty tough rules of engagement? Couldn't chase the enemy to certain places, couldn't bomb harbours, mine harbours, you couldn't hold territory, you had to leave it and let the enemy re-infiltrate? Okay. Sorry? Couldn't bomb the dams. Wow, you know. And here's a really stupid question. Did those policies hinder your efforts to win that war? So if you were allowed to fight that war like you were in World War II, to actually win and take the battle to the heart of the enemy, do you think you could have won it?
We did win.
Yes, you did.
Put in all the restrictions that
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
and then the Democrats stepped in.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get to that because that's exactly the point I want to make. What I'm saying here is simple, and the gentleman has said it. You lost 58,000 men in that war. I guarantee everybody in this room was touched by it. Classmate, fellow soldier, whatever. 58,000 men, let alone the hundreds of thousands who are wounded and damaged by it, let alone the millions of Vietnamese who suffered from that communist victory. People, your Congress defunded the South Vietnamese military. They gave the communist victory. They handicapped your troops every step of the way. Those people, Democrats mainly, like Father Drynan out of Massachusetts, deliberately worked to sabotage your war effort. Many of them were working very closely with the Communist Party USA, which was taking its orders directly from the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, which was allied to the Communist Party of North Vietnam. Do you think there might have been a little bit of treason going on there, folks? And how many of those congressmen who deliberately sold out your troops, who condemned thousands and thousands of your countrymen to completely unnecessary deaths, how many of them paid a single penalty for what they did, folks? One of them is now Secretary of State. And John Conyers is still in Congress, folks. How long's he been there now? 140, 160 years? Yeah, a little longer, Civil War, I think. John Conyers led the Judiciary Committee for years and years and years. Still serves on it. The Judiciary Committee is a body that writes those wonderful federal laws that protect your freedoms. You know the ones? It is also the body that oversees the Federal Bureau of Investigation and sets its budget. What is the role of the FBI when it comes to finding traitors and subversives in your government? Supposed to be hunting them out, right? What would happen to the budget of the FBI if they ever came after the communists in your Congress, folks? What do you think John Conyers and his communist friends on the Judiciary Committee would do to the FBI?
Annihilate it. Their leaders would probably be found committing suicide all over the place.
Exactly. So can you see the problem, folks? Once you're in Congress, you are safe because the FBI doesn't dare come after you. Because the FBI will be over if it does. Can you see the problem? And you think about Charlie Rangel, for instance. Well, John Conyers has got a 50-year history with the Communist Party USA. He's got a 40-year history with Democratic Socialists of America. He's been a card-carrying member of it. And he's got a 20-year history at least with the Workers' World Party. A party that supports North Korea, Cuba and Iran. John Conyers is a hardcore anti-American Marxist-Leninist. Yet he oversees the budget of the FBI. What about Charlie Rangel, Ways and Means Committee, the body that writes those wonderful federal tax laws that help your businesses prosper and make you all rich? You know those ones? Doesn't obey them, but he writes them. Charlie Rangel has got a 50-year history with the communist movement. Member of 2 Soviet fronts that I know about, and invited Fidel Castro to Harlem in 1995 for a wonderful festival together. What about Rosa DeLauro, one of your top Democrats, Nancy Pelosi's deputy? And Nancy's got a 40-year history with the communist movement, by the way. Rosa DeLauro was pictured in my book hugging the head of the Connecticut Communist Party in the headquarters of the Connecticut Communist Party. Her best friend, Joel Fishman. Joel Fishman is delegated by the Communist Party with liaising with the Democrats to get as many left-wing Democrats elected to your Congress as possible. And what about Tammy Baldwin, the senator from Wisconsin? Long-time member of the Colombian Support Network. That group supports the FARC terrorist guerrillas in Colombia, narco-terrorists. They fund their revolution by selling cocaine to your youth. She has used her position in your Congress on several occasions to try and get US military aid cut off to the Colombian government so they can do to Colombia what they did to South Vietnam. And if she succeeds, then they will sell even more cocaine into your country. What about Judy Chu, folks? Judy Chu from Southern California, Congresswoman from the Los Angeles region. Looks like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. Lovely coiffure, nice suit, softly spoken. On Obama's re-election committee, head of the Progressive Caucus, head of the Asia Pacific Caucus in your Congress, one of the most powerful congresswomen, the most powerful members. Goes to China all the time, folks, to build business ties between China and California. When she's in China, she tells the press there, "I am coming home." The Chinese press describes her as China's representative in your Congress. Greensboro, North Carolina, folks, 1979. The Communist Workers' Party, a hardcore, nutcase, Maoist outfit, pro-Chinese, got in a street gun battle with the Ku Klux Klan. Automatic weapons were used in broad daylight and 5 people died. The Greensboro Massacre. You look it up. Pretty extreme, don't you think? Judy Chu used to head one of the Communist Workers' Party's main front groups for years. She still works with 5 former leaders of the Communist Workers' Party right now. One of them, Kent Wong, helped her to set up the Asia Pacific Caucus in your Congress. Basically, China's best friend in your Congress. You have got at least 100 members of your House and 20 members of your Senate who could not pass a basic FBI security clearance to clean the toilets at any military base in your country. And neither could your president. Think that could be a bit of a problem, folks? You can sort out every other problem in your country, folks, but if you don't get the traitors out of your legislature, people, you're going to go down. Do you think the Cubans would tolerate 100 pro-Americans in their parliament? Do you think the Russians would tolerate 100 pro-Americans in their Duma? But you're doing it, people, right now. You see them on TV every night. But I don't want to depress you people with any of that or bring you down in any way. Am I a little bit late? Sorry about that, folks. I hate it when people walk out about now. I just don't know what they're going to do, you know. But this is how I see it, folks. If I thought there was no hope for America, I'd be back in my beautiful New Zealand right now, building bunkers and stocking up on baked beans. I'm not mocking prepping, believe me. But think about it. 2008, the left thought they had a slam dunk. They had the House, they had the Senate, and they had their man in the White House. And their agenda was all written out, folks. 40 years of hardcore infiltration. All those 60s radicals like Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dawn, who'd been burrowing through the Democratic Party, through the unions, through the universities, through the media, finally, folks, their hour had come. Finally, they had all their ducks in a row. They were going to take down the great Satan, folks. But in 2009 and 2010, something miraculous happened. What do you think it might have been, people? You guys. How many Tea Party people in the room tonight? Yeah, exactly. Where were you people? You come out of nowhere, folks. You know, and you got up and you blogged and you marched and you emailed and you rallied and you agitated and you phone banked and you put some much needed spine into the GOP. And you guys, you people, the 912s and Glenn Beck, took back the House in 2010. You did it, folks. Absolutely you guys. People, in 2008, Obama could walk on water. 2 years later, thanks to you, he lost the House in a landslide. And that brought the agenda of the left to a grinding, screeching halt. They had it in the bag, folks. They were breaking out the vodka. Who was going to stop them? John Boehner? They had it in the bag, and a bunch of amateurs and novices came out of nowhere and took their toys away. And some of you wonder why they hate you, why they call you dirty names. Why don't they like us? People, 40 years of hard work, the revolution was underway, and a bunch of amateurs and novices took it off them. That's why they hate you. That's why they call you dirty names. People, the Tea Party saved America. And some people don't see it quite that way. A lot of Tea Party people are in the fight. They don't see the big picture. But a lot of outsiders do. There are millions of people around this planet who appreciate what you guys did. Because had you not done that, the entire agenda of the left would have been in the first term, the first 2 years. Card check, cap and trade, green jobs, Obamacare would have been in the first year. 20 million illegals would have been voting in 2014, folks. Maybe 2012. You imagine where you would be now if that had happened. How would you fight back from that, folks? The Tea Party saved America, and they don't get a heck of a lot of thanks for it, quite the opposite. But I'm here to say thank you very much, because without you, we would have very little hope. I'll give you another little example, people, because sometimes I've spoken to, probably 400 Tea Party groups all over this country. I think I've spoken to 43 of the 57 states now. See if you're awake. And look, sometimes I think you're a movement, you're a little bit like baby Superman. You don't know your own strength. Like, you know, amnesty would have been a done deal years ago without you. But I'll tell you another example. I was in Washington, D.C. 2 years ago for the 50th anniversary celebrations of the Institute for Policy Studies. Hardcore guys, these progressives. They used to work with the KGB, now they work with the Cubans. These are the ideas people of the Obama administration. I paid my 75 bucks, I put on my name badge, and I mingled with the Marxists. Because I wanted to know what they're thinking, people. Know thine enemy. That's what my books are about, people. You cannot win a war if you don't know who your enemy is and their strength. So I sat through several sessions and I got bored, folks. I got bored because they talked about one thing all day. You. Tea Party this, Tea Party that. The Tea Parties took the state legislature's office. How did we not see them coming? What are we going to do about them? How did this happen? We've got to do all this work all over again. They were going on about you, bleating on about you all day. It was tedious. They hardly mentioned the GOP. It was all about you. So if you don't understand your own strength, they do. They know you are the only thing, the grassroots is the only thing standing between them and what they want. You are so important, folks. You're so important. I want to do something now that's normally considered very bad manners. But I'm a Kiwi and I can go home, right? Okay? Because you don't go to someone else's country and tell them how to run things, do you? Just not kosher. But I get asked all the time, you know, what do we do? Do we form a third party? The GOP betrays us? Do we just do local issues? Are we wasting our time? Should we give up? Should we just forget about all this? You know, are we making a difference? My only value to you is as an outside observer. Because often you can see your neighbour's situation more clearly than they can see their own. And this is my view of your situation, folks, for what it's worth. You have 100 years of progressivism to unroll. That might take you 10, 20, 30, 40 years, I don't know. One thing I do know, you've got a massive battle coming up in 2 years. You've got the 2016 presidential election and you have to win it. You have to win. Because otherwise the Democrats are going to dissolve the border and they're going to swamp you. Now there's only one political force that can stop the Democrats in 2 years, and that is the GOP. But the really important question is this: what will the character of that GOP be? Because if the old guard prevail and they give you someone like Jeb, Common Core is great, illegal immigration is an act of love, Bush, you're done, folks. Or Trader McCain, because your base will stay home and the Democrats will win and either Hillary or Pocahontas will be your next president, folks. You cannot allow that to happen. But if you have someone different, if you have a presidential candidate with a proven record of putting up his fists for the Constitution, or her fists, a proven record, thinks someone with the caliber maybe of a Ted Cruz, for instance, things could be very, very different. I'm getting to that. You just wait. Now, the question is, how do you get there? Because the battle for liberty in your country is a battle for who wins out in the GOP. Democrats are gone, folks. The Republicans are a third progressives, a third go-alongs to get-alongs, and a third patriots. Everything relies on those third patriots and the people that back them up. Well, I want to go back in history a little bit, because I think this is illustrative of where we are now. Go back to 1976. You've been losing your liberties for decades, folks. Republican, Democrat. But that was the year you finally got an alternative, because that was the year a man came out of California who spoke of a shining city on the hill, and peace through strength, and liberty, and the Constitution. And thousands of people loved Ronald Reagan's message, and they got into the GOP to help him get that nomination, and they thought the GOP would just love them. And what did the Republican old guard do about Ronald Reagan, folks? The Karl Roves and the John Boehners of the day. They hated him. They despised Reagan. They sabotaged him. They did everything they could to stop him. Ronald Reagan was far too extreme for the GOP. Ronald Reagan was unelectable. Ronald Reagan was banned from Ohio that year by the Ohio State GOP. And they beat him. They just beat him, and they gave the nomination to Gerald Ford. Ford went up against Jimmy Carter, and Carter won. How did the Carter years work out, guys? Barrel laughs, were they? Interest rates up to here, gas queues round the corner, gave away the Panama Canal, gutted your military, Iranian hostage crisis. Your second worst ever president, folks. Still suffering from him. And you think, people, how bad was the desperation of those Carter years? Many people thought America would never be great again. Is that true? Yes. But the really important point is this. The grassroots, the people like you, did not give up. They got into that GOP. They took over the precinct committee positions, the township committees, the nominating bodies of the party, and they got ready for 1980. When Reagan ran again, this time they were ready. And this time they would not take no for an answer. This time they forced that bloody GOP to give them their candidate. And Reagan got it, folks. He got the nomination and went up against Jimmy Carter and took him out 48 states to 2. Not bad for an unelectable candidate, right? The Iranian hostages were back on the first day. The interest rates went down. The taxes went down. The economy boomed. He rebuilt your military, and he rebuilt the pride in this country. And he took out the Soviets without firing a shot, folks. Any better president in the 20th century? Anyone even close?
Coolidge.
A white, yeah, okay. But behind for my time. The point, but why did you have a Reagan revolution, folks? Because people just like you stuck it to the Karl Roves and the John Boehners of the day, and you decided the candidate. Could there be a lesson there? Because right now, folks, this country is Jimmy Carter on steroids. And you need Ronald Reagan on meth to turn this around, folks. Not just to go where Reagan did, way beyond Reagan. You have to gut the federal government and restore your Constitution. But how are you going to do it? Well, this is my suggestion. If I was a man like Ted Cruz, I'd want to rebuild that Reagan coalition now. Reagan was a genius. He could unite the social conservatives, the fiscal conservatives, the defence conservatives. But right now your base is fractured. You've got 1 million libertarians who gave their vote to Gary Johnson last time. You've got fiscal conservatives, social conservatives, Tea Party Republicans, moderate Republicans. You've got 4 million GOPers who didn't vote last time. And you've got at least 20 million, maybe 30 million evangelical Christians who are not even registered to vote. Imagine what they could do to transform this country. But you may not know this, but a lot of these groups don't like each other very much. Have you heard of that? Okay? Now we are 2 years out from the most important election in world history, people. Can we afford this bickering? So this is what I'd do if I was Ted Cruz. I'd go to all of these groups and say something like this. We've got one shot at this, guys. We have to win. We have to unify, but you won't do that without inspiration and incentive. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to announce early and run early, and I want to get ahead of the field before the primaries. The first thing I'm going to do is name Alan West on my VP ticket right now. And then I'm going to name my whole cabinet, folks, and we're going to run as a team. I'm going to put Rand Paul as Secretary of the Treasury, and he can do what he damn well wants to the Federal Reserve and the IRS. Carte blanche. And it's going to be Sarah Palin, Secretary of Energy, and it's going to be drill, baby, drill. Drill in your backyard if you want to. $1 a gallon gas for every American family. And it's going to be Scott Walker, Secretary of Labour. And it's going to be right to work in every state. It's going to be Mike Lee, Secretary of the Interior. And he's going to take those lands the federal government stole off you and give them all back to the states, folks. So you can mine them and farm them and get your people working. Then it's going to be Michelle Bachmann, Secretary of Commerce. And she's going to stick it to the EPA in Osh. And she's going to get all your factories working again and get the regulations off your businesses. And then it's going to be Dr. Ben Carson, Secretary of Health and Human Services. And he's going to end the welfare culture in your country and restore dignity to your communities. And then it's going to be John Bolton, Secretary of State. And he's going to give the finger to your enemies, folks, and he's going to rebuild the Western Alliance. And very, very important, Ambassador to the United Nations, no one. Then it's going to be Trey Gowdy, Attorney General. And he's going to end vote fraud in this country, folks. He's going to prosecute and jail anyone caught doing it. And then for all those millions of Christians who don't care about politics, but they do care about the education of their children, I would say to them, vote for me and your millions. We'll make David Barton Secretary of Education. Common Core's gone, homeschooling's protected, your rights are protected. Name your whole cabinet, run as a team. Would you be inspired by a team like that, folks? Get out of bed at 5 o'clock every morning, just can't wait to go door knocking and phone banking. Get your neighbours involved, hold block parties. Wouldn't you be enthused? Yes. Inspired? Yes. And would it unify the base? Because everybody's getting something, right? Everybody's got someone to inspire them. You might not like Sarah Palin, but you love Michelle Bachmann. You might not like John Bolton, but you love Alan West. Everybody's got someone to inspire them. Because right now, folks, you have a big problem. Every 4 years, the GOP puts up some wimp and the media rips him to pieces. But what would the media do if Ted Cruz was running in this country with a team of 20 Rottweilers who are all backing each other up and not taking any crap from anyone? How would they handle that one, folks? So what I'm asking for you, he is eligible, sir, I'll deal with that later. What I'm asking for you is 2 more years of the hardest political work you have ever done. I know what this cost you guys in the time and energy and commitment. The time away from your hobbies, the time away from your friends, the time away from your families. I know your grandchildren sometimes don't understand why you can't come to their soccer game on Saturday.
Oh, yeah, they do.
Well, good for you, man. But I know what this costs, and I'm asking for more of it, people. Because 2 years is going to decide the fate of not just your country, but my country. Not just your children, folks, but my children. And I can't promise you very much, but I can promise you 2 things. If you do nothing, your children will live in slavery. But if you give it everything you've got for the next 2 years, you give it blood, sweat and tears, the very least I can promise you is the right to look your children in the eye and say, I did everything I could. What is that worth to you, folks? And if you win, and you can win, you'll give your children not just the amazing country you inherited, but one even greater. Is anything more worth fighting for, folks? So I want to say to you folks, thank you so much for what you do to America, for America, and for my country, and for liberty. God bless America. God bless Be a Witness. God bless the Tea Party. Thank you very much.
I think we have a friend of America here.